This is Racing Across America with Seth Merrow.
Welcome back to Racing Across America on this Monday morning. We are very happy to plug back into the Monday mix Mike Penna, Horse Racing Radio Network. Past few weeks vacationing and some other business. Mike, welcome back.
Hey, Seth, good morning. How are you?
Very good. How was the holiday?
It was good. Yeah, everything went well, and good chance to step away and clear your head and get a little break from horse racing for a few days. But back at it now, and boy, what a weekend this was. What a great way to come back to the game. You see all the fireworks we had this weekend, and the Clark Handicap, and all the big races in California and New York, and really just a great weekend to get back into it.
Yeah, and we'll talk and get some of your opinions about some of those races. Before we do that, though, let's just go back. We haven't had you on for a few weeks, so talk a little bit about what people might have missed on the Horse Racing Radio Network. And I went back and looked at the archive. Had a couple of nice jockey interviews. Rajiv Marat, I've had him on with me on television before. He's fun. He's always enthusiastic. Also an interview with Rosie. Yeah,
Rosie was amazing, and I was so happy to be able to catch up with her before I did leave on my little break. Here's a jockey, Rosie Napravnik, who is no doubt one of the top female riders we've ever seen in the game. She makes that bombshell announcement after winning with Untappable in the Breeders' Cup Distaff that she's going to step away from the game, that she's pregnant. I don't know if anybody saw that coming. As a matter of fact, her mother, who was standing there in the winner's circle with her, didn't even see that coming and really floored her. And Rosie wasn't planning on doing it that way, but she told me that she decided to do it just as the words came out of her mouth. She was even coming back on Untappable to the winner's circle and really didn't know if this was how she wanted to handle it or not. But all of a sudden, it just struck her, and she thought the moment was right, so she came out with it. She's happy she did it that way, and she's really looking forward to being a mama.
Yeah, and I found it interesting that subsequently she goes to the sidelines. They had the nice tribute for her at Churchill Downs in the winner's circle. That was nice. And then the news came out of Maryland that Forrest Boyce, the longtime rider on the Maryland circuit, was going to go down to Fairgrounds, and she was doing it on the advice of Rosie, who has done so well down there in the wintertime. I wondered, is Rosie going to transition over and become a jockey's agent?
Well, I know she's going to spend some time working with her husband, Joe Sharp, who is just getting started with his training career, and he's off to a tremendous start. She's going to spend a lot of time working with him. She's still getting on horses and galloping for him in the mornings, and they're going to work together for as long as they can until she has to finally step down and give birth to the baby and take care of the baby. And then don't be surprised if she comes back at some point after that and starts working with Joe again, and then maybe gets back into the saddle up the road. She did tell me that that door is open. If she does want to come back, it might just be too much for her to sit on the sidelines, especially in the prime of her career. So the door is still open for Rosie to return, but I know she's going to spend some time working with her husband right now.
Yeah, it certainly will be interesting to watch and see what happens down the road, because typically athletes, when they get to that highest level of whatever sport they're in and are competitive and successful, it's tough to step away when you still feel like you have a lot ahead of you. But given that, she will be a mother, and maybe that will pull her away. We saw Rosemary Homeister with her kid down in the winner's circle at Tampa over the weekend. That was a nice story, so it's certainly possible she'll be fun to watch. And as I say, Rajiv, did he talk at all about the injury and comeback and whatnot?
Well, you know, it's funny. That was an interview that was done by Ellis Starr and Anthony Stabile, who were filling in for me when I was away. And to be honest with you, Seth, I have not listened to the interview yet, so I'm going to go back and listen to it as well. I'm not sure exactly what he got into with those guys, but they told me they had a lot of fun visiting with him. And there's a guy, Rajiv Marat, that's all class. He loves the game, and you know he always puts the sport's best foot forward. So I can only imagine how good that interview really was.
Yeah, I got to go back and listen to that too, because as I say, I've had him on the show, and he's fun. He's very enthusiastic, and a really nice interview. And before we get into the racing, we looked back, Horse Racing Radio Network. Let's look forward now. You guys are going to head down opening weekend at Gulfstream Park, correct?
Yeah, this will be the third consecutive year we broadcast the Claiming Crown, and of course all of that coverage coming up on Saturday begins at 2:30 Eastern Time, and it's all presented by Kitten's Joy, standing at Ramsey Farm, and really looking forward to getting back to Gulfstream. It's a tremendous venue for Claiming Crown, and you know, to be honest, when you look at the entries this year and you see a record number of or nominations, you have to feel like this claiming crown at Gulfstream is a huge success, and I know they're tied into it for the next few years. So, I can't wait to get down there and provide that coverage to our listeners this weekend.
Yeah, I'm envious. Speaking of can't wait to get down there with the snow on the ground over the Thanksgiving weekend up here. We look with envy down at Gulfstream in Tampa Bay as we play those. All right, let's get into some of the racing over the weekend. Going back to Friday, love to get your thoughts on the Clark Handicap. Grade 1, $500,000, mile and an eighth. And this was not, last week we talked about this race on the show, and I said not the strongest edition of the Clark, particularly when you look at last year, which had eclipse implications and whatnot. But I had Jenny Reese on with me yesterday, and I said to her, and we're going to watch the stretch run here, it'll be number 1 Opportunity over number 6 Protonico, who I thought ran well, and I was really interested in the race. At the top of the stretch, I thought Protonico may be the winner, but Opportunity digs in. So Opportunity, Protonico, and number 7 Constitution. 3-year-olds going 1, 2, 3, keeping up that theme of the past couple of months of 3-year-olds beating older with a older division that was kind of depleted about the halfway point of 2014. But again, when I talked to Jenny yesterday, given that these 3-year-olds ran so well, I think that bodes well for us looking back at this Clark in the future and thinking it's stronger than maybe we thought going in.
Yeah, and how about these 3-year-olds this year? We were knocking the 3-year-olds, or a lot of people were. I think it was still too early to talk about the 3-year-old crop. I always say that going up to the Kentucky Derby. But a lot of people were saying, well, especially after California Chrome won the Derby, maybe this 3-year-old division really isn't all that good, and maybe California Chrome just isn't for real, and that means the rest of the crop isn't for real. Well, I think we've seen throughout the year that this is a pretty decent 3-year-old division, and I know that the older horse division isn't what we thought it was going to be going into this year with Game On Dude and Will Take Charge and Mucho Macho Man and those horses, and even Palace Malice that have all now gone to the sidelines. But still, this is a good 3-year-old crop, and we saw California Chrome prove that he is a serious racehorse, not just through the Triple Crown, but in the Breeders' Cup Classic, and then winning on the grass at Del Mar this past week. And now Opportunity, who never got the chance to run in the Kentucky Derby because of an injury, he comes back and proves that he's pretty darn good. I thought Constitution ran really well. He held on gamely. I expected him to be right there, especially coming back in that second try off of the layoff. These are pretty good horses, Seth, and the 3-year-old division has really held their own this year. Yeah,
it's going to be fun to watch in the first 3 months and see how these horses develop as 4-year-olds. But I think Opportunity is absolutely going to be competitive. Protonico, as I say, coming into the Clark, I found him very, very interesting, and I think he's a horse that maybe is getting a little bit better as he gets older. And Constitution, you throw Constitution and Opportunity. Opportunity, the race on Friday was only his 7th career start. Constitution, only the 5th career start. So I think we might not have seen the ceiling from these horses. And as I say, this bodes really well for that handicap division next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you throw in the likes of Bayern, who, of course, wins the Breeders' Cup Classic and holds his own this year. I agree with you. I think that these horses are still continuing to develop. They're very lightly raced, and we're going to hear more from them going into 2015. And how about trainer Bob Baffert? Who would have ever imagined that it had been since 1998 since he won the Clark? This was his 3rd Clark win, but he had to go back to Silver Charm, taking it in 98 to get his last one. With all of his outstanding horses that he's had the past 12 to 15 years, it doesn't seem right that he wouldn't have won it since 1998.
And Baffert reloads for the 3-year-old season with one of the better performances over the weekend down at Churchill with Dortmund winning that allowance race.
Yeah, how about that? And he goes off as the individual betting choice in the first future wager for the Kentucky Derby. Yeah. He looked really, really good, and if he continues to develop, I think it's outrageous that, what was he, 9-1 in the closing odds. I think it's just outrageous to take 9-1 on a horse that still is yet to run in a stakes race. But hey, if you can get lucky and this horse goes on and looks like a monster between now and the first Saturday in May, maybe that 9-1 looks like value on Derby Day, but it's an awful short price to take in that first future book.
Yeah, I said 9-1 short just to make a bet that the horse will get in the starting gate on the first Saturday in May. And I said last week, and I have to admit, I said at the top of the show, I completely forgot about the bet on Sunday. But I said, I may be willing to take a little bit of a shot with an experiment, a couple of $100 on all others. To me, 3 to 5 is not attractive at all, except in a very special situation like this. That November pool last year, only one horse out of that pool made it to the starting gate, right on Curlin, who finished 7th or 8th in the Derby. So if 3 to 5 on Derby day, if potentially you have no competition, that could be a generous price.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And, yeah, you're right. It really does look like value in this situation, and you don't often say that about 3 to 5, but I agree with you. And when you look at the body of the wagering opportunities that were offered, and you look at horses like American Pharoah and Carpe Diem, for example, and Texas Red, who won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, these are horses that I think are very, very serious race horses. But as you said, just trying to get to the first Saturday of May and get into the starting gate is such a monumental task that to take a short price and sometimes even a decent price on any of these horses is, boy, it's just a risky proposition.
Yeah, this is only the second year, so it'll be fun to see how it shakes out this year. But only one made it from Pool 1 last year into the starting gate. As I say, it'll be fun to see if that's the norm or if we get 2 or 3 in there, how it does play out. All right, let's move to Saturday's racing. And over at Aqueduct, the highlight, the wrap-up of the Grade 1 season in New York. It's the Cigar Mile for what wound up to be over $750,000 because of the entrance in here coming out of the Breeders' Cup races. But it'll be number 1, Private Zone, number 6, Secret Circle, number 9, Bourbon Courage, running 1, 2, 3. The favorite was Secret Circle at 5 to 2, but the way that track was playing on Saturday, it was just going to be impossible to catch Private Zone. And Private Zone at 9 to 2 does wind up winning and winning nicely. And Mike, I think the real disappointment in here was It's My Lucky Day in the career finale, running last in the field of 9.
Yeah, very disappointing, and I couldn't believe that effort from It's My Lucky Day. I didn't necessarily expect that he was going to win this race because I still wasn't sold that a one-turn mile was the way to go for It's My Lucky Day. But I really expected him to run much better than he did, and that was a bit of a head-scratcher. But you're right about Private Zone. How fortuitous was it that he was able to draw that inside post on a day where inside speed was just almost impossible to catch at Aqueduct. And, he breaks on top, he goes to the front under Martin Pedrosa, and then just never looks back. And he ran every step of the way. He cut out fast fractions, which is what Private Zone does. He's a very fast racehorse. But on that particular track, they weren't going to catch him that day. And that's not taking anything away from his performance because he's an outstanding racehorse and, a horse that's won well in excess of $1 million now with this victory. And, just a tremendous performance from Private Zone.
Yeah, and Bourbon Courage, the third, given that track, the second race in a row, he kind of looks good. Getting up late over a track that maybe wasn't playing to that. He had done a similar situation running from the back of the pack to be 4th in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, and I talked a little bit about it yesterday. Speaking of that Breeders' Cup Sprint, boy, this just validates how tough that race was. First 3 finishers in the Cigar Mile come out of the Breeders' Cup Sprint. The fall high weight on Thanksgiving Day was won by Saludos Amigos, who ran 7th in the Breeders' Cup Sprint, and the Cary Grant out at Del Mar was won by Big Mocker, who was 9th in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. So as I say, that has turned out to be a very productive race.
Yeah, that race has held up very, very well. And, you would kind of expect that because, you're talking about the best sprinters that we have in the country, and they're all meeting on that one day. And then to see them come back in their subsequent starts and run so well isn't all that surprising. But, yeah, when you look at the depth and the quality of that field, top to bottom, it's certainly proving to be as good as it gets.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's go out to one of the really most anticipated races of the weekend, California Chrome and the Hollywood Derby. California Chrome tries the turf, Grade 1 event, $300,000. And, Mike, I'll be interested to get your take on this because I said yesterday and even earlier today, I'm not exactly sure what to make about this. We're watching the stretch run here at number 5, California Chrome. Really looks like he's going to run away and hide from this field at the top of the stretch. But then Lexi Lou comes up and comes within 2 lengths at the end. California Chrome, the 3 to 5 favorite. And I said last week in anticipation of this race, they put up big money. It's a Grade 1 event. It's age restricted. You expect a fairly tough field. This wasn't the toughest of fields. And given that, I thought, even if California Chrome doesn't absolutely love the turf, he may outclass these. And that's kind of what it looks like. Now, given that, on the other side of the coin, the final time is absolutely legitimate. He did get it done. But I just, they say, oh, our options are open now. Now we know he can run well on the grass. I still see dirt in his future, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But what was your take on the Hollywood Derby?
Yeah, I thought he accounted for himself very, very well. I thought that this was maybe an easier win than some people, because certainly the margin was only a couple of lengths, and you say only a couple of lengths. Well, in a Grade 1, that's pretty darn good. And you're right, Lexi Lou was coming at the end, but I kind of thought California Chrome was more geared down at the end than anything. I think that there was probably more left in the tank, and Victor wanted to use it, but he did everything so easily in this race, and it kind of reminded me of what we saw throughout the Triple Crown, where you asked him for that acceleration at the top of the stretch, and he gave it to you in almost effortless fashion. And that's what it looked like to me. But what really intrigued me was everything that we've heard about California Chrome throughout the entire season has been that he likes a target to run at, and that he likes to be outside of horses and not inside of horses. And he broke sharp, gets out to the lead, and then Victor kind of lets the other horse go on around him. And so he has a target to stalk. And then, if you noticed, he moved him just to the outside of that horse. So he got him off the rail. He now had a target in front of him. He was able to sit the perfect trip and stalk on the outside. And then when he ranged up at the top of the stretch, those ears were just pricked back and forth. He was doing everything so easily. And I thought it was a really, really nice win. And as you said, maybe not the toughest of fields, but he did it the right way.
Yeah, and again, I will reiterate, Lexi Lou, the winner of the Queen's Plate earlier this year, so she was legitimate. And as you say, and that's one of my problems with the race, I kind of agree with you. Maybe this horse was kind of geared down in the stretch, and that made that a little more, an optical illusion that Lexi Lou was gaining some ground. So we'll see what they do with this horse next year. Again, I want to see another one on the grass before I really label this one as a real grass performer. And I just think when you got a talented performer like that anyway, things like the Big Capper hanging out there and other very good dirt races. So I don't know how much we'll see this one on the turf in the future, but it was a fun win. And now absolutely has added to the Eclipse debate in both the 3-year-old division and Horse of the Year division. 4th Grade 1, but they were all age restricted. Main sequence, 4 Grade 1s also. Bayern is in the mix. I'm going to be really interested to read over the next week or so what some of the pundits are saying coming out of this race vis-a-vis the Eclipse Awards.
Yeah, it really makes it interesting. I think that it may come down to a bit of a popularity contest this year. And he's done so much for the sport throughout the year. He has become so popular. You look at more than 20,000 on hand this past Saturday at Del Mar to watch him run in that race. He is just such a horse of the people, and I hate to even use that term because it's so overused, but he really has become that type of horse that people have become drawn to, and I think that's what might get him over the hump with voters. You mentioned the 4 Grade 1s. They've come on 3 different surfaces, but no wins over older horses. Shared Belief, Bayern, they've both done that this year, and Shared Belief did it a couple of times. So I guess if you're looking at just strictly performance on the track, maybe those horses have a slight edge if you're giving credit to wins over older horses, but neither of those horses were able to win a classic race earlier in the year, whereas California Chrome took 2/3 of the Triple Crown. So how do you weigh that into the discussion as well? So it is an interesting debate, and I think that just simply based on popularity, that will be the one factor that gets California Chrome over the hump with most of the voters.
And he was very popular, and you mentioned it. Boy, they had over 20,000 at Del Mar this weekend. And as they came out on the track during the race, after the race, even on the simulcast signal, you could hear the crowd. That was a lot of fun. And I'll just tie that in. How about that Del Mar meet, which the numbers just compared to Hollywood in previous years just rocked the place. And I think they had put the 21,000 in there this weekend. That helped, but they were averaging 9,000 people a day out there. I'm amazed, and it just goes to show. We talked a little bit about it on the show before. The brand, the brand makes a difference. Obviously, they moved down to Del Mar. It's just a different mindset. Obviously, it's not Del Mar summer, but still attracted a lot of attention.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you had your choice of racetracks to go to in the fall, if they were both running against each other, where would you go? You would go to Del Mar over Hollywood any day of the week and twice on Sundays. It's just that type of racetrack, that type of environment. and they did an outstanding job getting people there, letting people know about the meet, and it's only going to continue to grow from here.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit earlier. It's going to be interesting to see now the short Los Al meet and how they do. No turf racing out there, but it's going to be interesting to see how it stacks up against Hollywood. It's certainly not going to have the Del Mar numbers, but I think they still might stack up okay numbers as compared to Hollywood in the past.
Yeah, and I love that racetrack. What they've done there with the surface and the reconstruction, the reconfiguration of that racetrack, it's really, really nice. And the couple of times I had the chance to visit Los Al this year, I really enjoyed myself, and I think that they're doing a lot of positive things too. So it won't shock me if they come out with a pretty decent short meet here this time.
Yeah, and I think they will as well. As I say, I think they'll stack up okay to Hollywood in the past because they're kind of brand new and it's fresh, and they have a couple of nice 2-year-old races that'll hang over from Hollywood, so I think they'll do all right also. All right, speaking of popular horses, we'll wrap things up with our look at the weekend racing. The rescheduled Fabulous Strike from Penn National. It was supposed to be run last Wednesday, but of course in this area of the country we had that weather situation on Wednesday. Some snow came in, and so they took their entire card and moved it to Saturday. So the Fabulous Strike at Penn National was run on Saturday, and this race is interesting because Ben's Cat, the venerable Ben's Cat, the number 6 horse here, will get it done over number 12, Burn Identity, and get it done pretty easily. Ben's Cat was winning this for the 3rd year in a row, just got by Rebo Bobo last year by half a length, but does it this year with a nice salty field. Burn Identity is absolutely legitimate. Strapping Groom was in here, wound up 6th. I will note Strapping Groom fell after the wire and wound up breaking a bone. Okay, but has been essentially retired at this point. But Ben's Cat, the venerable King Leatherberry, the venerable Ben's Cat, the 8-year-old, over $2 million, wins the Fabulous Strike for the 3rd year in a row. Just an easy horse to root for.
Yeah, and I don't know how many more superlatives we could use when we talk about Ben's Cat, because it seems like each and every time he goes to the post, we're raving about this horse, and rightfully so. Making his 45th lifetime start this past week and 28th career victory now. His earnings well in excess of $2.2 million, and an 8-year-old gelding still at the top of his game. And you mentioned the field. This was a quality group, maybe not the quality certainly of a Breeders' Cup Sprint, but it was a really, really nice field. And here is this 8-year-old Maryland-bred gelding who just keeps on delivering big performance after big performance, and just such a cool horse and so easy to cheer for.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's fun. And again, then you toss in his trainer, King Leatherberry, and it's just a great story. And it's fun also because this is a horse that really is more turf meant. He's more of a turf sprinter, but he goes over there to Penn National and just his class gets it done. And as I say, this weekend, it wasn't even close. He kind of ran away from this bunch.
Yeah, he likes that surface, doesn't he? And I actually, watching him pull away, I actually got goosebumps for a minute because, he is 8 years old. He is still running at the top of his game, and he's just such a cool, neat horse to cheer for. And I love seeing horses like this that still love to compete and can do it at a very high level.
Yeah, I'm with you. They're fun to root for, and we lament a lot of the time the horses that leave the game too early, get retired after a big season as a 3-year-old or whatnot. But there are these horses as well that we got to promote a little bit more because they're fun to watch and they're very, very talented. Mike, as always, appreciate the visit. Glad to have you back in the mix after a few weeks away, but hopefully the batteries are all recharged. And again, remind people what's coming up this week on the Horse Racing Radio Network.
Yeah, we'll make our way down to Gulfstream Park. We'll be live with our Equine Forum show, a special Claiming Crown edition on Saturday morning from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time, and then we'll segue into those Claiming Crown races in our exclusive coverage on Saturday afternoon, presented by Kitten's Joy at Ramsey Farm, and that comes up at 2:30 Eastern Time. And
speaking of Ramsey Farm, I said at the top of the show, I looked at the stats from Churchill, which wound up their meet, and when I had Jenny Reese on yesterday, I was laughing because Ken and Sarah Ramsey were 1 behind in the owners category behind Gary and Mary West. I think he had something like 6 horses entered yesterday, wound up getting one of them, got a win, and wound up with the tie. And I pulled up the stats, the press release from Churchill. It's his 23rd owner's title down at Churchill.
Oh, it's remarkable, and Ken Ramsey loves the game more than anybody that you will ever meet, and he loves to win races more than anything. And Ken will be at Claiming Crown next week. He is the all-time leading trainer and leading owner in training Claiming Crown history, and looking forward to seeing him there and seeing if he can lead a few of his winners into the winner's circle there next Saturday at Gulfstream Park.
Yeah, and it's always fun because you can look down the past performances at his horses, and there will have been a claim made within the past maybe 2 or 3 or 4 starts, and he was looking for a Claiming Crown horse.
Yeah, they start looking for Claiming Crown horses 6 or 7 months prior to the Claiming Crown, and they try to determine which horses they can fit into those races. And again, he loves these big days. He loves to win on these big days and to dominate these big days, and that's what he's going to try and do again next Saturday.
Yeah, it should be fun. And all the action on the Horse Racing Radio Network. You can go to the website and pick up the archive info as well. Mike, as always, we appreciate the visit. We'll talk to you next week.